Jamstack 101, using Gatsby and Netlify for blazing fast websites with Joel Varty.
All right, let's dig in. Let's talk about Jamstack and all the different things about Gatsby, Netlify, and we're going to be sort of basing this on using a CMS with these tools. There's lots of different sort of things out there for how to use Gatsby, how to use Netlify, just in sort of in general. But the idea is if you want to use this in your business, and you want to use this, with your clients, with someone who, you as a developer, you want to actually write code. You don't want to be working with content. And I think that's one of the reasons why Gatsby is so great, is it works amazing with CMS and Netlify as a place to deploy that. So let's dig into it. I got a few slides here just to kind of do an intro for who I am and sort of what the topic is, and then we'll go directly into some code. Most important thing here is, I think we're part of a community. I'm learning from you guys. I want to be able to, show you guys all these different things, but feel free, interrupt, ask questions. It's okay to interrupt. I don't know that we'll share the slides after there was a question in there, but I think what we'll for certainly do is we'll share the video and all the slides will be on there. There's only a few slides. All right. Who am I? I'm Joel Varty. Follow me on Twitter at Joel Varty. And this should be, a chance for me to talk to you. I've been working for Agility CMS for a long time, been building websites for a long time, more than 20 years. God, that's scary. But the Jamstack is a new concept to me in terms of the last couple of years, and I've really worked closely with some of the folks at Agility. It's actually James Vidler, who I work with closely at Agility, who brought up the idea of Jamstack to me. And this has been one of the things that has really invigorated my passion for web development and all things kind of, in terms of like building a better web. I think this is a real great direction. One of the things about me that might be fun is I'm also super interested in musical theater. So there's a few pictures of me having fun on stage, Music Man, Young Frankenstein, and I also played Patsy in a production of Spamalot. So that's a lot of fun. I'm really missing the theater these days, and I can't wait for it to come back. All right, Jamstack 101.0. Let's talk about what we're going to get through today. We're going to help set up the tools. I'm going to try to do this, and so we're finished in about an hour. I may go a little over. That is going to go at a certain speed, so it may be tricky if you haven't got tools set up locally, but I feel free, watch this video later so you can pause it, slow it down, and then reach out to me on Twitter at Joel Varty if you have any questions for sure. We're going to set up our local development environment for this. We're going to push it all up to GitHub, and we're going to do a preview and build on Gatsby Cloud. Using Gatsby. You don't have to do this, but I think it's one of the things that I really encourage. And then we're going to deploy it to Netlify from Gatsby. Lots of different ways to use these tools. I'm showing you a particular workflow that we found useful when working with developers who are working with customers who want to be able to preview stuff from a CMS and want to be able to actually get those deploys working. And so you as a developer, you can build all the code, put all this stuff in place as part of a DevOps pipeline, a super simple DevOps pipeline, and then you can actually, the customers can actually work on this without you being involved in terms of getting things deployed, in terms of new content. Cool. All right, I'm just trying to keep an eye on the comments as I go here, but I got two monitors. I'm gonna try to keep things moving. Okay, we're gonna learn how Gatsby works. We're going to learn about Agility CMS and how a CMS helps you sort of build content and pages in the content. And we're going to look at those deployment options. So let's dig right into it. How does Jamstack work? If you're a web developer, you probably understand the idea of a web server, because in typical web, sort of pre-Jamstack, people use web servers. But in the Jamstack universe, people use build servers. Okay, we have and we're going to have a local build server that we use in this case, but we can also have an actual something else be the build server for us, which in this case is going to be Gatsby Cloud. Netlify could also be your build server as well. And then what happens is we have content from somewhere, from one or more sources, and it could be something like a CMS. And then you have your code. That's going to be combined on that build server. At build time, it's going to output static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That is literally the magic of Jamstack. And there's lots of different ways to get to that outcome. Gatsby being a tool that is one of those that's really popular. And I think it's one of the ones that has really paved the way for this concept to go, because it's such a great way of working with code. So once you have those static HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, you have to make them available on the internet. So we have to store them somewhere, and that's an icon of a hard disk, kind of like an old floppy disk. But so we have to store it somewhere, and then we have to make it available through something like a CDN. What's amazing is Netlify does this for us. Netlify is an amazing service that takes care of storage and CDN and all that stuff for us, and it's free. All of the stuff I'm going to be showing you today is free, and it's free forever as a developer for you to use. So that's incredible. Both we're actually going to get started with a CMS account, a Gatsby account, and a Netlify account, and you can use them all for free pretty much for as long as you want. So let's look at Gatsby and specifically what it does in order to kind of solve problems. I'm going to super oversimplify this, but hopefully that helps for you to be able to talk about it. So Gatsby relies on something called GraphQL, but it doesn't rely on GraphQL servers. It has its own GraphQL engine built into it. And all of the data sources that you use need to implement some kind of way of getting data into that GraphQL. And so in the case of the CMS that we're working with today, Agility CMS, it actually has what's called a Gatsby plugin. It's a lot different from a WordPress plugin, but there are Gatsby plugins out there for almost everything. And that has to basically expose your data as GraphQL. And now that data is available for us to use in our code. So there can be, content and pages and all kinds of stuff that's available in GraphQL, but other plugins can pull in stuff too, like it could be e-commerce data or data from your own APIs that do whatever. That is all going to be used within React code. So Gatsby is based on top of React. And so you basically write React components to use the code from GraphQL, and there's a specific way of querying that. And then there's this build process that runs that's going to output, again, our static CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. So that's how it works. One of the other things that Gatsby does, because it has this specific build process and it has the GraphQL layer, is it allows, and I've seen some comments already posted, it allows for something called incremental build. Because Gatsby controls the GraphQL layer, it builds this like huge dependency chain underneath. So it can say, hey, if this one piece of content changed and that piece of content is used on these 3 pages, I only have to update those pages that it was done. So that they have this concept of incremental build. They also have the concept of preview, which is super, super important, and we'll show you that. So that means that you can set up this pipeline and write this code and have it worked in preview mode. So like someone from a CMS can say, I'm going to edit my content, I'm going to preview it before I publish it so I know what it's going to look like on the website. And that's really, really important. All right. Well, that's enough of that. Let's get started. I'm just going to take a quick second here and peek back at the comments. Looks like we don't have any questions yet. It's good because we really haven't done very much yet. Cool. All right. I'm going to kill PowerPoint. We don't need PowerPoint for anything else. Goodbye, PowerPoint. All right. So we are going to start this with the idea of what tools do you need to have locally. But the first thing I need to have are a couple of accounts. So the first thing to do is to create, we're going to use Agility CMS. Agility CMS has a free package. So if you look at the pricing page, there's this free, and it actually gives you very generous sort of free usage, 2,500 content items, 10 gigabytes of bandwidth for the API, free forever that we can use. And the paid account's pretty cheap too. So we're going to need an Agility account. We're going to need a GitHub account if you don't have a GitHub account, all right, github.com. So go there, do that. And you're going to need a Gatsby JS account, js.com account, but don't worry about creating that just yet. We'll kind of walk through it as you go, but that you basically sign in to Gatsby with your GitHub account and have to create a connection there. So I'll let you go through and do that. And then we're going to need a Netlify account. So netlify.com. And then, so when you click, there's a login and sign up. Again, when you sign in, it's going to be a sign in with your GitHub account is the easiest way to do it. So the GitHub account is the sort of thing to help you get going, github.com. Actually, Agility CMS is going to be rolling out a change very soon that allows you to sign up to Agility with your GitHub account. So if you put this off for a while and put it off for like 3 or 4 weeks, it'll actually get easier to do, but it's pretty straightforward right now. So let's do it. I was going to click on the get started for free here and fill out a bunch of stuff. And one of the things you can do is Gmail account. custom Gmail account if you want to. While I do all this, but I want to do the exact same set of steps that you're going to be doing. So you fill out a bunch of stuff, and then you choose which of the starter templates you want to use. So we're going to be using the Gatsby starter blog. If you follow along, in a few weeks, we'll be using Next.js, but don't worry about that right now. So we're going to click on here, and all we need to do is give a project name. So because I've created so many of these, I'm going to create one that's like October 1, 2020, because I've done a lot of these. Cool. All right, here we go. This will take a second as it provisions your account and does all the things for you and sets up a bunch of stuff in the CMS to help you get started. So yeah, feel free to kind of do this later, or you could try to follow along. It may be a little too fast to follow it along. When you do sign up, feel free to go through. There's a little tour here. I'm not going to go through the tour because we're trying to get this through. But the first thing you see on here is this getting started page where it actually walks you through what to do with Gatsby and Agility. If you just Google Gatsby Agility CMS, it'll give you the same set of stuff. But we also help you get going just with Gatsby in general, okay? So the first thing you want to do is actually install a Gatsby CLI. It has a local command. CLI stands for command line interface. And so one of your tools you're going to need is a local terminal. And installing this locally, you probably want to, if you're on a Mac, you probably want to run sudo. If I don't run sudo on mine, it barks at me and says it's not going to install. I need more permissions. So go through and just go ahead and do that. It does take a minute to do that. If you already have Gatsby on there from like a long time ago, it may behoove you to do an npm install of this to get the latest version. Gatsby is a company that's moving very, very quickly. They have so much stuff that they're installing all the time and updates that they're making. Incremental builds was one of the updates that came out not too long ago. So this is one of the things, and they just have improvements all the time. But now I have access to this Gatsby command, and what we're going to do is basically create a new project. So Gatsby new is the command we're going to run, and we're going to call it something. I'm not going to call it Agility Gatsby Starter. I'm going to call mine October 1, 2020, and then. But all that's going to do is basically create you a folder really underneath. So let's go ahead and get into the right folder that I want to be in. So cd documents, cd agility, cfe.dev. And okay, so I'm going to go Gatsby new, and then you have your project name. So I'm going to go October 1, 2020, Joel. And then the next command is basically the GitHub repo that you want to start from. So Gatsby, one of the reasons that's taken off so fast is people have written starter packages to help you get going. You can start from a blank Gatsby project, which is completely empty. That's really difficult because it's like, okay, what do I do now? Where do I put all my configuration settings and how do I pull in plugins? That's really difficult. If you start with something as a developer, as you know, it's always easy to like, okay, this is what I'm starting with, and I can, get rid of the stuff I don't like and add in more stuff as needed. Okay. Hopefully everyone's following along with me already. I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on the chat as we go. Okay. So the Agility Gatsby Starter, by the way, is on GitHub /Agility Gatsby Starter. So I'll paste that into there and run this command, and it's going to do all the things that I need it to do. And hopefully it doesn't take too long to run. There is a way to fix the local npm install for global packages on the Mac. Oh, I'd like to know that way. If someone could teach me that, I would be very, very grateful. All right, we're going to let this thing go. And as it's running, I'm going to make sure I have this running. So I have Visual Studio Code right here. You don't have to use Visual Studio Code, but I really recommend it because it seems like most of the community does. a big part of the community is running Visual Studio Code. So I love it. It's amazing. I actually kind of grew up as a developer using Visual Studio, the main sort of paid package all throughout. And I feel that Visual Studio Code has kind of returned to what I loved originally about Visual Studio. But it's free. It's an amazing sort of package. Tons of plugins. As you can see, I've got a bunch of plugins from different things here. And enlarge the terminal font. Actually, what I'm going to do, so I should have done that first. Good point. I'm not going to be using that terminal font much. I'm going to actually increase my font size in here. Just to here, font. Good point. Font size there. Terminal font size somewhere. Console font size. That's all I need to do. Hopefully that'll do it. Okay. So now I think that's done. Okay, it's done. Good. Did it work? It's all good. Okay. You can run that in any console you want. Oops, so still doing a few more things. It takes a second because it does something called an npm install, which creates a folder called node modules. Oh my God, there's too many options on here. I'm not doing anything more with terminal. Okay, I'm good with terminal, did all that. Now what I'm gonna do is there's actually an integrated terminal in Visual Studio Code that I'm gonna take a look at. I'm gonna use that. So here's the folder that got created. So you gotta remember where you put stuff. That's super important. So for me, I put it under Documents, Agility, Dev, October 1, 2020. The more, as a developer, the more projects you have, I really encourage you to keep a really good track of where you put stuff. Having like a dev folder is really great. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna just, here's a little trick. If you wanna open a folder in Visual Studio Code, just drag it in and it will open it like a project. You can also use the open folder thing too. Okay, so this is the project that we have. And you can see, let's take a little tour here. First of all, we've got this node modules thing, and you notice it's gray. So if you haven't worked very much with sort of NPM, Node Package Manager before, Node Package Manager basically pulls in all the stuff it needs, and there are like gajillions of files under here that you really should never have to touch, okay? But the other thing is it's gray because we're not gonna be checking that into source control because that would take forever, okay? There are also a couple other files that are example files that we want to change a little bit here. So we have .env. So anytime you see a .env file in one of these places, in one of these projects, that's usually a file that's going to have your what's called environment variables or your keys in there, okay? So to run this, we need to have keys so we can access our content, okay? So what we did, I'm going to jump back to my browser here for a second. In Agility, if I scroll back up a little bit, we have API keys that it created for us in this project. And I'll take you on a tour of the project first, but let's plug in all the keys first. So the first thing I need is that what's called the instance ID, the instance GUID. So let's copy that. I'm going to pop that. First of all, I'm going to rename these actually. These are .example files. I want to have an env.development. So this is what's going to run when I'm in preview mode. And I have env.production. So if I want to test, this means I can actually test my production build locally. And that's really important to be able to do as well. You won't be running production builds locally, but we want to be able to test them out. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste this GUID into here, and then I'm going to paste it into my production as well. Okay, so I've got both of those things all set up. Then I'm going to get my, you got to remember which one is which. So I have my live API key. So you have to click show on there, and then I'm going to copy that. So that's for code that's, for content that's actually been published. So I'm going to put that in my production env file, okay? And then I'm going to get my preview API key. So this is to access content in preview mode. I'm going to put that in my development thing. Okay. So this is Agility specific stuff here, okay? So, hey, this is my GUID, my API key. Other CMS packages have their other way of doing this. Almost always they're in .env files. Make sure that these are light gray, okay? And what happens is these are in what's called a git ignore. And this is not a Gatsby thing necessarily. This is just a regular thing. Do not check in .env files that have keys in them. What folks have started doing is actually checking in a .env file with like basic things that they're not secure, and then just putting specific ones that are based on like a local or development environment or whatever, having them local and not check those in, but there's a bunch of different stuff on that. I'm not going to go into .env files right now. Okay, so we have all those set up. And literally, though we haven't really done a whole lot of stuff, we could actually just run this. So that's always fun. I think it's the most important thing as a developer, to be able to run things. So we're going to show the terminal. So there's a built-in terminal command in Visual Studio Code. And then we're going to run Gatsby develop, all right? Now with NPM, we could set up in our package.json, we could set up other ways like npm run dev and some things like that. But actually knowing the Gatsby CLI commands are really, really important here, okay? So what's going to happen here is now this is actually going to run this site in development mode, in preview mode, right? And it's really cool because it shows you what's happening at each step of the way. So I'm gonna actually back up a little bit here. You can see there's some Agility CMS stuff here. So Agility has actually got a plugin running that's pulling down all the content and putting it into GraphQL for me based on the project template that we used, which actually has some sample content in it to help us get going. And then what it does is it actually runs a web browser that we can use. Okay, so if we actually just go to here, and then I'm going to actually paste this in. You could just click on it, or you could do like Control click or Command click. And here you go. So I've got this running. This is running the website locally in preview mode. And as you can see, we've got a little preview mode that runs up here. We'll actually dig into the code in a second to see what's happening there. But there's also a couple special things to keep in mind. Remember I talked about GraphQL earlier? Well, Gatsby actually gives you a GraphQL Explorer so you can figure out all the different things that are going on with that content in the background. This is a way to make yourself, to help learn about all the different things that you need to know about in terms of what the data actually looks like. So this is, you can see, this is I've been using this to play around with a different website for commands. Let's just take a look at something here. So you can see we've got all kinds of items that are in here. Some of them have agility on them and some of them don't. So there are some that are basic things that Gatsby stores about all the different things that it's got, but it's also, we've got some agility stuff in here as well. So all the agility content that we have is pulled in, the CMS content, and other CMS plugins will do basically the same thing. And if you're writing your own plugin, then you can go ahead and do that and learn how to do that. I'm not going to go into how to write a plugin today, but having written a plugin, I helped write the plugin for agility. That really helps you get sort of a little bit of knowledge of how Gatsby works, and it's fascinating how it works. Anyway, back to our code for as a web developer, what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so we've got everything running local. It's amazing. There's one other thing that's kind of a really neat thing that you can do. So I like to use the built-in terminal, and I'll just shrink this down a little bit. So that way, as I'm coding, it'll actually tell me if I do something that's a problem, because this has, Gatsby takes advantage of something called hot reload, which can actually split your terminal, run two terminals. Gatsby has this other cool thing called the refresh endpoint. And I think what I did is I maybe in the README, hopefully we have this somewhere, where I think it has basically the way to refresh this thing. I can't remember. It's like an _ refresh. Wish I could remember it. I don't think I have it in here. Let's find it. Give me 1 second. I'm going to open it. I have it in the README of another project. And it's super useful. And I'll actually paste it into the chat so you can remember it and keep it for yourselves, because I use it all the time and it is super useful. It allows you basically to refresh all your plugin content without having to, here you go, another README file. Yeah, here you go. Without having to reload the server, because running a Gatsby develop all the time is like super not fun, because it means that you got to wait like 30 seconds or for a while for that to run. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste this into my terminal window. And so I have two terminals going at the same time. And you can see that what it does is it just goes and checks for new content everywhere. Here, let's paste this into the chat. This may be a little weird because there's a time delay between the two different things, but that's how you do that refresh. Okay, cool. So this is how I set up my local environment when I'm going to work on Gatsby sites. And I find that it works really, really well to kind of get everything going, and I'm all set to go now. Okay, so if you get to this point, you're doing great. You've got everything running. You've sort of seen how it all works. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through what Agility CMS actually gives us in terms of content that we can work with. Okay, Agility works on the idea of there's basically two concepts that developers should really care about in terms of what you can build on top of. There's something called, I'm just going to go into the content modeling section here. There's page templates, module definitions. Okay, those are the two sort of main things that we build around. And then we have content definitions, which allows us to actually define our content. So I'm actually going to start here because this is the one that pretty much every CMS has the idea of a content definition or content types or content models, whatever. And so if I'm using a blog, then they'll probably have something called an article or a post. Okay, so in here we've got the post definition. So there's a title, we can put an image on here, we've got a details field. Super, super basic. Obviously, I could add other fields onto here like author or bio or date and all those other things. But let's stay simple just for a minute, okay? I also have a global header. So we can create sort of global items to be able to define settings on our website. And this one only has one, it's called site name, okay? So when I've set up those content definitions, there's no contents actually been created yet because this content definitions can populate what's in the shared content section of Agility, okay? So the shared content section's over here. So I've actually created 2 shared content pieces based on these 2 things. Let's have a quick peek at them. So I've got a list called posts. And the reason we do kind of like a schema and then the actual is so that I could create multiple types of post lists or different types so you can kind of reuse them. Oftentimes there usually is a one-to-one relationship there for the definition and the actual implementation, but that's how it works. And so as a developer, I add all the fields, so the content types, I create this list, and now my editors have the ability to add items and edit items on this list. And depending on how I set it up, it's going to have a look and feel on here in terms of the order of the fields. You can do tabs, all kinds of stuff. So this one just has 3 basic things. Let's browse and upload an image onto here. So when I click browse, it gives me the data library here. I can add some folders onto here. I'm gonna have a folder called IMG, and let's upload a picture. And let's find something that's fun, something from Unsplash. That's a fun one, looks like a compass. Okay, so that's a pretty big file. This is gonna show me some stuff that is happening in Gatsby as well. So this is a huge 1.8 megabyte, not huge, but probably too big that I'd use. But Gatsby has some really fun stuff happening in the background to make those images really high performing, okay? So Agility is gonna warn me that that image is pretty big, could have a bad impact, but we're actually, as web developers, we're gonna take that JPEG and we're gonna be smart with it, okay? So we've got this content. I can put an alt tag here, a compass. All right, I'm gonna save and close that. So that's a very high level overview of Agility. If you've worked with any other CMSs, including things like WordPress, it'll be pretty familiar, but this is a headless CMS, so there's no concept of where the website is yet. I'm just setting up content, right? Let's jump back to the content modeling zone here, or section, and we have these things called page templates and module definitions. So Agility has the ability for me to actually create pages on a sitemap that can then be translated into a tool like Gatsby. And each one of those pages has a template. And the template is really just a placeholder for zones, okay? For me to say, hey, I want content in this zone, which is like inside like a div tag or a component children on my website. So we're gonna call this one column template, and it has one zone called main content zone. It's super basic, all right? Let's jump into the actual code to see how that's implemented, okay? Jumping around, hopefully this is not gonna lose people, okay? So pretty much always in these cases, my code's all in the SRC, which stands for source code, right? And then conveniently, there's a folder called page templates, and there is a React component in here called one column template, all right? So this doesn't have very much in it because there's a layout template that's happening for all pages that is used, a layout component, page component that Gatsby has. We'll get to that in a second. But really, this is a super basic component. There's literally, I've got a div with a class that's associated with it. And then I've got this content zone component that's a thing that we give you. The source code for this is stored in here somewhere. But I'm just going to name it based on the name. So that's kind of the only Agility black magic that's in there that says, hey, we're going to get this data that comes into my props, and it gets passed into each of the different content zones. And if I had multiple content zones, I could, if it was something like, I don't know, your templates could look something like this. I'm going to live code here for a second, and it's probably going to be disastrous. But, it could be something like this where I had two, here it might look something like that, like side content zone or something like that. In this case, we're going really simple. Oops. But it means that I only have to write this once and it gets reused everywhere, okay? So that's pretty straightforward. Just keep that in your head for a second. And then we have something called module definitions because, on a page template, we get to put modules in there. And I'll show you what that looks like before I dig too much into what the module field looks like. Because there, well, I will look at it. Here's a Jumbotron or like a hero module, and literally it just has fields, okay? But it has a reference name called Jumbotron as well. So I'm going to create a component called Jumbotron to render these fields, right? Now I haven't actually even looked at pages yet. What I want to show here is that with this system, you actually set up your page templates and your module definitions, and you don't have to actually create pages. A lot of the times you'll see Gatsby examples, Next.js has this too, where you actually have like a page tree in your folders for your code. The problem with that, I mean, that's fine. It's a fine way to get started, and that works okay. But that means that if you ever want to add a new page or move pages around, that you're doing that as a developer. And I think that's not a developer's job. A developer's job should be to create the code, not to do content. But let's show you how to do that. So I've got this module, Jumbotron.js. So this is the React component that's going to render the Jumbotron module based on the reference name that I showed you. And it gets all of its content sent to it as props. Okay, this is what I love about React, is it just the props just gets passed down. The data for my component is given to me in the props here. And now I can say, hey, if I have a background image, I can render the background image. Otherwise, it doesn't have a background image. And then I just have my, so it comes through, the fields come through as a custom fields property. And I get my title and my subtitle. It's super basic. So here's the title, the subtitle. So all I had to do was know what my fields are named. And one of the little tricks that we could do is actually, and this is what I do all the time, I hope you guys have something similar to make me not embarrassed, but I think pretty much every JavaScript developer does this. Just output your props as a console.log so you can see what's in there in case you forget how something's named. That's a good way to work. All right. So I've shown you how the code works. Let's look at how that actual content gets implemented in Agility. Okay, so there's this section here called Pages. So this is the most basic sitemap you probably ever see. Customers of ours that have tons and tons of pages, like we have one customer, I think they have like 60,000 pages, which is pretty huge on a sitemap. But most of the time they're not that crazy. So let's look at the home page, okay? So on the home page, this was created using if I look at the settings for it, the one column template, because we only have one, it uses that template, which means that it's got this content zone. And you can see someone's put on the Jumbotron module, a rich text area module, and a posts listing module, okay? Let's look at the Jumbotron module first, because it's the one we saw the code for. So it's right here. Now we've got the ability to fill in our title and our subtitle. Let's just put a little piece of content in there so we can see that this actually comes through, okay? So I'm going to save that, and I could actually jump to the module definition from here too. So it's a really nice thing to be able to do that, to be able to, you know, as you're working as a developer, sort of getting it all started. You can sort of change some code, change some definition, flip it back and forth, and kind of work as you go. And if you're wondering if that's a good workflow, it absolutely is a good workflow. Get the tabs you need on your browser open, get your sort of your development environment sort of set up and ready to go, and then you can do stuff. So what happened was I actually changed some content, and I think that was going to show up here, right? So what was the little command we had? One of the tricks here, almost every terminal uses this, where you click the up key to repeat the last command. So I'm just going to run that. And you can see that it's saying, hey, pulling content changes, refreshing the source data. And it found an image on that one post. Remember that? So it's going to pull that image down. One of the Gatsby plugins that we're using in this project is called something called Gatsby Image, I think, where it actually pulls down images and like makes them super high performing. So that's cool. Did all that. I didn't have to change any code. And I think it actually auto hot loaded it too. That's pretty fun. So that's a really nice thing about how Gatsby, and this is more of like a React and Jamstack thing. A lot of Jamstack tools have that hot reload. So if I just I'm going to just arrange this here. Hopefully it doesn't make things too small for you folks. Okay, I'm going to go side by side view here for a second. Okay, so you can see that on this is the one I was just working on, right? If I also had like other pieces of code that I changed in here, if I just wanted to put some extra content there, I can change that, and I don't have to refresh my browser to see that, okay? If you're not a Jamstack developer, then this is like, the first time I saw this, it blew my mind. But it's one of those things you kind of get used to, and I think you should take well advantage of that ability to basically do what's called hot reloading. Question from Antonio: what's the relation of the code in agilitycms.com and the MS VS Code? So yeah, good question. So Agility CMS and pretty much every CMS out there basically just gives you that content, and it's in the cloud. Okay, it's available. Some CMSs are actually self-hosted, so you have to actually host them and run them yourself. This is an example of a SaaS product where it's in the cloud, and it basically gives you that via an API. Inside, actually going to go into the guts of Gatsby in a second, but basically there's an API with a JavaScript SDK that pulls down that content from Agility, and there's no code that it pulls down. It just pulls down the content as JSON files that then gets translated into GraphQL, which then gets used inside and sort of piped into your React components. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of happens behind the scenes, and it just kind of floats up the content and the data that you need to work on. And as a developer, I think that this is a great tool if you're kind of more of a front-end person. But even if you're a back-end developer, it should make sense to you once you kind of get the hang of it. So you're going to spend most of your time sort of in the modules or the page templates area as a developer building stuff. Let's dig a little deeper into what's actually happening under the covers. Let's spend a few minutes here. Let's look at what's called the Gatsby config file. This is where you need to kind of know what's going on. I'm not going to go through all the documentation for this. All the stuff for this. There's lots of documentation. There's Gatsby.js. Actually, this is now Gatsby.js.com. They've combined their two sites, but they have tons of documentation that you can need. So it's like, hey, how do I edit my config file is a thing that lots of people put in. But one of the most important things here is this plugins list. Okay, this is an array. And you can see we're using the Netlify plugin. We're using the React Helmet plugin to get better SEO. And then there's the Agility Gatsby source, the Agility CMS plugin. Okay, so this is basically an NPM package for Agility. So this is also pulled into the package.json. And it has a bunch of options, which basically just pipes in the different config variables that we defined in our environment files. But it also has what the languages are for your site. So this is multi-language capable. We're going to start off with just English here, but you could add lots of other languages. And then Agility also has the idea of channels. So by default, there's one channel, if you see over here, called website, and there's only one language called English. You can do more languages, you can do more channels, and it's available in the free package. I believe you get 5 languages. I can't remember. And you get something called this master page template. Okay, so Gatsby has the concept of page components. So with most Gatsby installs that for CMSs that don't have page management, you actually have to create like folder structures and a page component for each page in your site, or for each page in your site that could be linked to, like if you have a blog, for instance, and a list of articles. For other lists, you would just have one page component called like blog details that would then pull that in and create a different instance of that for each list in your blog post list. For Agility, you only actually have to have one. You can have more than one, but there's only one that it needs to render all your Agility page templates through, and that's here. And we call it agilitypage.js. That's where all the magic happens. This is also using the Gatsby plugin. It's called the Gatsby Sharp component, and the image transformer. You don't have to use these, but this is really, really nice to create really fast images to help you get those page speed scores. Makes the build a little slower too. So I'm kind of on the fence about whether to use this one all the time. I hope things are making sense so far for people. If this doesn't make sense and you're watching this on a recording, please tweet me at Joel Varty on Twitter. Send me a question, call me out on stuff that doesn't make sense, and I'll try to answer that for you. Okay, cool. Moving forward, let's dig into what's actually in that agilitypage.js. So we have a bunch of components that are set up here. The main one is the layout template. Okay, so this is like how I as a developer set out all the things for my layout for the whole thing. Because this, again, the only thing we're returning is a bunch of components here. So let's just dig into that layout template there. So all I did was hit F12, by the way. And it's actually super simple. It's just doing, basically, I have a section and I'm going to put all my children under the container. So if you're given like an HTML template of like, hey, this is the design of your site, you're going to plug it into the layout template.js that's here, and you're going to put your CSS into this. Now, we've put blank CS, like just like regular CSS files, really easy to use, like Sass or less, or you can even use CSS in JS, like styled components and stuff like that. I am working on another starter package that is actually based on Tailwinds, if you want to use Tailwind CSS and styled components as well. So that's also coming, but this is nice because it's like the bare bones. You can add all sorts of stuff on top of it. Okay, so we have our layout template. It is super basic. What else is happening in Agility page here? We have this SEO component. Okay, this is how we create. One of the things that the Gatsby does is it allows you to control the SEO really with a lot of sort of granularity. Okay, so here's the title. So I'm passing the title and description into here, and here's my meta description. I would encourage you, if you're doing like a real world website, to also pass in things like the Open Graph image or any other Open Graph tags, or like Twitter cards and all kinds of stuff you can put in your head tag. The helmet component does that for you. Works really well. Okay, and then let's get back to the Agility page here. And then we have this little preview bar component. I'm not going to go into that one, but all it does is take my view model, which has been sort of generated here. Okay, so we have this, I missed this one line of code, agility utils.build page view model, which basically takes something called the page context and combines it with this piece of data, okay? I'm gonna back up a little bit, sorry about that. So each page component has what's called a page query. So this is a GraphQL query that gets the agility page object. So which basically like this page here gets represented as an object in GraphQL, okay? And we query basically for the page ID and for the language code, okay? And then we're gonna query for an agility item. So it could be, and I'll get to this in a second, it could be that I'm actually rendering like a blog post. So that is something called a dynamic page, which I won't get in too deeply into, but what I wanna be able to do is have this page render for each blog post. It's called the dynamic page. You can see how it kind of looks different in agility here. So for that case, I actually need the page object plus the content item that represents that blog post that gets combined at runtime, or at build time, I should say, okay? So we got the little preview bar there, talked about that. So this view model that gets built has the ability of I'm in preview mode or I'm not in preview mode. And then it outputs, I think it's here, see this guy, preview mode. If I wasn't in preview mode, it would disappear. Got a global header. Okay, and oftentimes folks will have a global header and a global footer, but this just shows you how to do that. And we're passing in, hey, what's the language code? Am I a multi-language site? Do I need to have like a language flipper? And that just renders up here. So this is the global header. And this has the first static query. Okay, so this is something you need to understand if you're going to be working with Gatsby. All right, let's just take, I'm just going to grab this real quick. I'm going to grab this whole query, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put it into this guy here. So localhost 8000 __ GraphQL. And this gives me, okay, so we've got, remember that global header thing that we showed first? So this is back in the shared content, global header, this global header item. We've got that. And all I really wanted to do is get the site name. Normally, like, global header items, configuration items will have like tons and tons of properties for the site, all different settings that are like global, right? You can use those anywhere. That's where that belongs. So that's here. I could pull this in. Oh, I'm just getting the site name. But then I have sitemap nodes. So the benefit of having a sitemap is I can actually use that to generate my navigation if I wanted to. Okay, which means as I add more pages onto the site, I can actually make the navigation components from that if I want. I don't have to. Sometimes people create like a list for the navigation too, but that means that the navigation for my site is controlled by the content editors, not me as a developer, which might seem scary, but it's actually really awesome because it means that you can build the site and you're done. So we see here, we've got some sitemap nodes that we're going to use to actually render this thing, to render a bit of a menu, okay? So this static query, this is actually a static query component that gets used, right? And it has a render method down here So in the render method, all I'm going to do is compose a view model based on a combination of the query data and some other stuff that might be passed in. In this case, what we're doing is I'm taking this. So we get two objects here. So like we've got the agility global header object and the all agility sitemap node object. So we get query data dot all agility sitemap node, and you can see it just matches right here dot nodes, and we have these are the standard GraphQL stuff. But if this is the first time you've seen it, hopefully it makes sense for you. Okay, so I'm just going to basically parse out and loop through my GraphQL stuff that's returned there and figure out what I need to use. Okay, what this case is actually splitting the top level, finding out if it's a top level page and only showing the top level pages in there. Okay, and then I'm going to pass that as props into my global header. Okay, so this is the case where I have to basically do the work of getting my data for my component from the static query. Okay, and then we just do some standard stuff here. We're creating a list of li tags and outputting them here. And this is using this special link tag. Okay, so Gatsby is amazing for SEO. We could see we had the SEO component that we put together there and started there too. Gatsby is also really great for just user experience after you get it running, okay? Because if you use these link tags for any internal links within the site, in which case your navigation almost always is almost internal link tags, just passing the path around, it means that it operates as a single page application as you work, okay? So as I click through here, I only have a couple of pages, but I've got this post page. It doesn't need to reload the whole page. It actually does some kind of black magic stuff. It basically takes the JSON of all of this stuff that basically this, if you look at what got passed into here, into the props, it takes that and passes it to you, all the different parts of that page, so that it doesn't have to rebuild the page every time. This is awesome, okay? It means that your site is, first of all, it loads really fast because it's static. It does have to build up some JavaScript, and there's some argument in the sort of Jamstack community about whether that's awesome or not. I think it's pretty awesome because it means that I've got this SPA that is super fast. I'm in preview mode right now. This is not even like compiled JavaScript, and it's still really fast to navigate around. And I think Gatsby does a great job at making the site really fast after that. And is also basically, you don't have to do anything, and it can create what's called a progressive web app. So that means that it's really easy if you wanted to like install this as a mobile, on a mobile device, to install it locally on like a Chrome device, Android device. I think you can do it on Windows. I'm not sure about iOS yet, but it works really, really well for progressive web apps as well. So some awesome stuff there. Okay, so we looked at how to do the header. That's pretty cool. Let's go back into our page component, okay? And we've got this agility page template thing. So this is another special agility one, but all it does is it takes the content that we've got from the agility page, this view model that we built up here. I'm not going to go into this code right now, but it's pretty straightforward and it is all provided for you. Actually, we'll just jump to it real quick. This is one of the things I love about Visual Studio Code. Really easy to jump around code. It basically just builds us an object with our page. What's the dynamic page item? Is it preview? Is it language? All that different stuff that we might need. You can feel free to actually go in there and change that if you need to. Okay, so this is the magic of the content editor puts together the page and then it gets assembled into this page template with modules, okay? So what this does is it decides, well, what page template is actually on this page object? And then it decides, oh, I'm going to render the 1-column template. And if I had another one, it would render the 2-column template or whatever I named it, okay? So it'll render this, pass in the props, and then this content zone module, which we also have the code's all right there. It's pretty straightforward. It's just standard React stuff. It takes that page and says, okay, what are all the modules? It just does a for each around all the modules and outputs the components for each one of those. Hey, what's the module component that I need to render? Go ahead and render it. And all it does is a require here. So this is like the most basic React stuff, but it means that as a developer, I never have to go into here. I almost never go into this stuff. You're just living in these kind of modules that you build. So you spend all your time just actually implementing the front end code that you need to implement. So it's really, really straightforward. This good comment on the iOS has support for progressive web apps, but it's far from perfect. Yeah, I would love to see progressive web apps move further along so that people could do more mobile type app type development in tools like Gatsby without having to use a lot of other sort of like app store type frameworks, especially if it's for pretty straightforward stuff. Cool. All right, loving the comments. You guys are great. This is awesome. Okay, so I got 6 minutes left. Let's deploy this thing. So the most important, I might go a little bit of overtime. Apologize for that. I kind of got stuck in all the agility stuff. Hope we've shown a bunch of things about how to basically hook up your CMS, how to do a bunch of stuff in there. There are more tutorials on how to use CMSs. Each CMS platform has its own set of tutorials. Agility has tons of them. Reach out to me and I'll help connect you with more of those. But this is a good start. Basically got it all hooked up. We're running it locally. If I wanted to build it locally, I'm going to Control C. I just run Gatsby build. Okay. It's important to do this. What this is going to do is take all of my published content and actually do a build on it to see if the site's going to work. And it'll just put it in a folder here. Okay. It'll take a few minutes to get that done, or a minute or so. Not a whole lot of content to run in here. Cool. So that's important. I'm going to assume that this is going to work. While that's going in the background, I'm actually going to go and create a new GitHub repo for this. So I'm going to go up to here and I go plus. So I logged into GitHub. I go new repository. Hopefully this isn't brand new for folks. And this is actually pretty straightforward. So October 1, 2020, Joel. I guess I forget my name, I guess. I don't know. You can do it private or public, doesn't really matter. Create that repository. All good. It actually gives you some help tools here, which I'm actually going to use. So this, by the way, the build worked. It's good. This is developer multitasking. It's like go to one window while you have something running. It's cool. Probably doing too much at once, but that's okay. All right. So I'm going to try this one. So it does a remote add origin, git branch main. Ooh, calls it main now. That's nice. Cool. And I'm going to push it. Boom. I am terrible at Git, by the way. I always have to copy and paste commands. If you know how to do those, by hand, amazing for you. That's awesome. You can also use this tool to push stuff as well. So we have a few changes that I made. I don't really care about these changes because they're really important. So I'm not gonna push those up right now. And you notice that these two files, I deleted them because I renamed them, but I did not push up my .m files. So if I just refresh this guy, it's basically got my everything, but I don't have, it has these example files, but I didn't actually put anything in there. Okay, so these files don't even need to be in the source at all. So here's my initial commit. I have everything in GitHub, so that's great. Now go ahead and create your Gatsby cloud account, gatsbyjs.com. Jump onto there. Pretty straightforward. Create that. Okay. Then you're going to create a Gatsby a website. Okay, so I think the first time you create an account, it doesn't add the site right in there, but it just gets you into this flow. Love that they changed the default to main. That's awesome. I think it was not that yesterday, so I'm really happy. So you're going to start from a Git repository. Gatsby Cloud also allows you to start from a template, and there is an Agility CMS flow that you can use here as well. But in this case, we already have a Git repo, so we're going to start from there. Click Next, and you can use GitLab or GitHub. I just showed you how to do it from GitHub for now. So I'm going to do it in my organization. So this is my GitHub organization. And I think I called this one Box1. So you can kind of search for it if you have a lot. It's called main base directory. So this, so choose the main branch. Base folder is almost always going to be the just slash is fine. Okay, and we're going to give it a site. Okay, so there you go. I need to have that. Boom. And it's going to create the site for me. Okay. Optional integrations. So we don't need to do, there's tons of CMSs that work. Agility is one of them, but there are these other ones as well. Feel free to try them out. Oh my gosh, this list has gotten a lot bigger. Lots of instructions for different CMSs, lots of different things. Notice that there's this hook here. Agility has the ability for this to automatically push updates into here. But we don't need to do that just yet. Actually, let's do it. Okay, we're going to copy that. Back to Agility real quick. Jump into settings. There's this thing called webhooks. We can create two kinds of webhooks in Agility. So this is going to be, I think that's, which webhook was this? Excuse me. This is preview. So this is our preview webhook, I think. Actually, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to skip this step and come back in a second. I don't remember. Okay. I think this is all good. Okay. I need to do some environment variables. All right. So we have two sets of variables, build variables and preview variables. Okay. So if I'm on the regular build, I'm going to set is preview to false. Remember, I need my API key and my good. This is the production ones. Okay. So I can copy them from here because that's pretty easy. I could also copy them from agility. So there's my good. Paste that. Here's my API key. That. I'm going to set my, don't forget to set the preview ones. Okay. If you leave these blank, the build will fail and you'll have to come back and do it. It's not the end of the world if you forget. But his preview is going to be true in preview. API key, I don't have that yet. I have my good, which is this. API key here. This is my preview API key. Hope I'm not going too fast, but I am trying to not burn your whole day here. Or night, depending on what time it is. Okay, so I think I have everything set up. This is great. So I do not have to check in a .m file. So you don't have to check those files in. All right, so I save that. That's all there. You do have to click save. Don't forget to click save. And then create site. This will take a second. This is going to provision everything inside Gatsby Cloud and do it for you, and it's all good. Oh, it doesn't do a build by default. I'm going to trigger a build. So this is under the deploy section. So this is the main build of the published content. Okay. If I have any content that's not published, it's going to show up under way up over on the right. It's kind of hard to find if you don't know where it is. CMS preview. And this is going to be built automatically. So this is like running Gatsby develop. Okay. So that's all that. While that's happening, I talked a little bit about webhooks before. Okay. So we've got a deploy hook and we've got a preview hook. So when content changes in the CMS, we want it to be reflected, or I think you should want it to be reflected in the actual website. Okay. So here we go. See these webhooks? They're right here. It gives us two. We've got our preview webhook and our builds webhook. So I'm going to copy this. I go back to agility. I go to settings, webhooks, and I paste this in. And you can say which events you want this webhook to be sending. So I only want content save events. So anytime anything is saved or changed, basically, I want that to go and update my preview. Okay. So I'm going to save that. And then I want another webhook for publish events. If I had my own workflows, I could do like approvals and other kinds of stuff. But just for Gatsby, I want to know if something is published or unpublished. And I want to know if something is saved. That's it for those two different kinds of builds. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Builds webhook. I'm going to copy this, paste it here. And this is going to receive just the publish. So only when things are published or unpublished, as it matters. Okay, so here we go. Those are these two. I've got a publish one. We've got a save one. Awesome. Let's go back to the Gatsby dashboard and see how it's doing. Okay, our first deploy built in 27 seconds. Woohoo! And it gives us a URL for this deploy. I'm going to click on it just for fun. Hey, look, there's the website. Now, this is not the live URL. This is a URL you can share with folks to have a look at it, but it's not the live URL. We haven't deployed it yet. I hear that Gatsby is changing how they're doing this stuff, and things are changing often. But they give you basically a deploy. That, by the way, this looks a lot different than it did like even a couple months ago. So there's a lot happening with Gatsby. But they give you basically this is for every single build. Notice that this is a unique URL. They give you the build URL. So if you have an old build and a new build, you can actually compare them side by side in your browser with different URLs, and that's called an atomic build. Okay. It's still building the preview. It takes a little bit longer to do this, I guess. While that's happening, let's like multitask even more. I'm going to jump back into the site settings. And I'm going to go down to integrations. So we have these data source integrations, and we've already used Agility as a data source, but you can actually have multiple data sources, by the way. I'm going to look at hosting integrations. I can host my Gatsby website. So again, Gatsby Cloud is just really the build and the preview. It's not the hosting, okay? But you can host it on any of these other platforms. And these are like changing all the time. New ones are coming in. I think one of the best ones to host on, we won't talk about Vercel, we'll talk about that in 3 weeks, is Netlify, okay? So I'm going to click connect. What that's going to do is say, hey, connect your Netlify account to this website. Yep, I want to connect it. It's going to make me log in if I wasn't logged in, but I am logged in, so that's great. I'm just going to ask me permission to do this. Go ahead, do it. Trust you. It's going to be great. Okay. What's the Netlify deployment site name? So I'm going to call this, I would advise you to call it something similar, if not the same as what it's called everywhere else, so you can keep track of it. Cover one. Okay. And choose your Netlify team. I only have one. It's my own team. And it's connected. Like I just deployed the website. Well, it's actually not deployed yet, but I've hooked it all up. And this, so I've basically done, you know, I remember that PowerPoint we had, like, you got to do Git, you got to get it into, so like a source control, we got to get into place to do the build, and then we got to get it deployed. And we've just hooked all those things up, and that's kind of mind blowing how awesome that is. So let's go back to our deploys for a second. I think we have to trigger another build. By the way, it does a Lighthouse score for us on every build. We can trigger another build on here, but let's actually test something else. Let's go to our, I think we edited an item back over here. I think I did this one, but I didn't publish it, right? It says it's previously been published, but I didn't publish the new image. So let's actually publish that. So what this should do is this should actually trigger a build to happen in Gatsby Cloud, which should then trigger my first build to go over to Netlify, okay? So you can see it's queued up here. It did it. That was pretty quick. So this is like triggered by the Gatsby build webhook. Okay. And I can actually look at all branch builds, and you can see that it actually, when I switched the hosting configuration, it triggered another build, which actually deployed over to Netlify. So while I've got my webhook build still happening, I'm going to go over to here for a second, and let's actually just go, and I'm going to refresh this tab. You can see I've done lots of Netlify builds. Here's this one. So it actually gives me a URL, and I could hook it up to my DNS and all that sort of stuff. But I'm going to open it, and here's my netlify.app URL, and there it is. So this is actually the storage plus the CDN for this. So we've got it all hooked up, which is awesome. So let's actually, but we're not quite there in terms of giving our customers something to use, because the whole point of this thing is like, yeah, we want to be web developers and everything, but we want our customers to be editing the content. That's, I think, the magic of all of this sort of, all these tools working in tandem with each other. So this is my, right now, this is my production URL, okay? This URL is not going to change with each version, okay? So I'm actually going to plug that into the CMS so that people can view the production version of stuff without having to remember what the URL is. Agility has this, and it's under the domain configuration, okay? So we have my website channel. We can have multiple channels. We have website domains. I'm going to add a new domain. So this is my production domain. The URL for that domain is netlify.app. And I'm going to mark it as the production domain. I could have multiple ones in here because you can deploy your site to multiple different places if you want. But usually there's one production and one preview domain. There we go. Let's check if Gatsby preview is done yet, because I really want to show that. It is done. So notice it took like a couple minutes for the first one to go through, but only took 4 seconds for when I published the change, it actually did a preview hook as well. So I'm going to actually, let's look at the preview for this site. So it gives me this preview dash my site name .dtsb.io. So that's the preview link that doesn't change for that site. So let's plug that into here as well. I'm going to call this preview. And this is the URL. It's my preview domain. All right. Now, let's see what's magical about this. So that means that even if I don't know what this URL is, I'm going to just close down some stuff because I got too much open. It's my local host. I don't need that right now. Okay. So imagine now I'm the editor of the website. I'm actually doing some work, and I'm like, oh, I don't want this. I want whatever. I don't know which word. Okay. So save that. Okay. That actually, as I save that, it actually triggered a webhook build. I'm going to click preview. Okay. And so it clicks me into the preview of the site. Now, one of the things that the editor doesn't know is that there's like a little build happening in the background, but you can see that hot reload actually worked there. Okay. So let's just take out that word, click save. And it takes a few seconds for that build to happen, but it does not take very long. And it will actually hot reload. So if you have two tabs like side by side, which you can do, some folks work this way, then it will actually hot reload your content as you're going. I don't know about you, but as an editor, I love this. That means that I can really quickly, just like as a developer, I love hot reload. I like to be able to do all that kind of stuff. It's amazing to be able to do this as an editor as well. Okay. Now there's one other thing. I hope you have some questions. Put a bunch of questions in, and I'm gonna go back through in a second. I'm almost done. The one thing that got asked early on in this was, what is incremental build a thing yet? And this is the other thing that Gatsby Cloud gives us. It gives us this awesome preview, but notice our site builds were actually like 20 seconds, which isn't as good as it could be. Okay, so we can enable something called incremental build. It's like if we look at all of these builds, they're all, they're not terrible, but I think it could be faster. So, and I don't think incremental build is on by default, but let's check it. Excuse me. So I'm going to, under my site settings, I'm going to click builds, incremental builds. Oh, they're not available for the free plan. Forgot about that. Okay, so that's the reason that you would want to potentially upgrade from a free account. So as I said, you do have a free account with Gatsby. I forgot that it's not on there. I think they do give you a trial. I've already used up my trial. If you're just signing up for Gatsby Cloud the first time, then the free trial allows you to do that. I'm going to actually jump to my paid account for a second here. How do I switch? Yeah, I do have a paid account with Agility. And actually, let's look at the actual Agility website under here. Or actually, these are the starter sites. This is the same code, basically. This is what it would look like. So you're here, we go builds, and enable incremental builds. Just turn that on, and all of a sudden your builds are going to be, as opposed to like 20 or 30 seconds, depending on how many pages you have, it's going to be like 3, 4, 5 seconds to get that done. So that means that when someone clicks publish, they don't have to build the entire site. It just does the page that was there. One caveat for that, for incremental builds, remember we did have some global stuff that was used on every page. So like if I change the global header, it will rebuild every single page. That is one of the things to remember. Okay, so we've shown what Gatsby is and how it works in terms of like an environment to use in your code, how it works there, and how it actually pulls in content and works with that content from a CMS like Agility CMS. We've shown how we basically get that up into GitHub, and how we can connect that to Gatsby Cloud, and then how we actually deploy it live onto Netlify. And then once it's on Netlify, you see I can actually hook it up to my actual DNS, to mywebsite.com if I wanted it to be. But you can also see these deploys here. Each deploy is, again, that we deployed from Gatsby has its own. There's only one deploy, right? Oh, there's two. You can see each one of these has its own URL that I can use as a preview URL here. So you can see this one has, so Gatsby gives us deploy previews, but so does Netlify. In case there was something that actually went wrong or whatever, it tells us exactly what happened. Okay. I've shown you an awful lot of material. Thanks for hanging around, guys.
Thanks for watching.